Louder.
Here we are again. This is Vulva Views with Amy Novat and Alison Chawla, and we just like to laugh.
Yes.
And I think that's one of my favorite things about my time here with Alison. But I also want to say, if you like what you hear on Vulva Views,
If you want to laugh.
that's right. Keep telling us that you like Vulva Views. Give us 5 stars, comments, share with your friends and family, because that's what keeps us going. And please, if you have any concerns or questions or, any concerns, please send comments to comments@radiofreerhinecliffe.org or gynocurious@gmail.com. So I just have to start, Alison. I really dig that shirt you're wearing.
Thank you.
The whole thing today is springtime.
Oh, yeah.
On a walking beauty.
Well, why, thank you. Thank you. I'm trying to get better at accepting compliments at my 47 years of age. This outfit was also inspired by my very recent short haircut. I feel like I look like Rizzo from Grease.
Well,
No, our producer Jen Hamoud is shaking her head. I think Rizzo was foxy, but you don't think I look like. Are you trying to say I don't look foxy?
that's what we call entrapment.
Are you calling me fat? No. I'm kidding. But thank you. And it's funny because someone also had complimented me on the haircut, and my initial reaction was to downplay, I didn't like it, and it's a little shorter than I expected, but blah 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 blah, and it got me to thinking about how so many women, including myself at times, will apologize for being attractive. And it also reminded me of something that you had told me about once, Amy, which was, I think you had said you read something, you were listening to something, and a woman was talking about accepting her beauty. Does this strike a chord? Do you recall what I'm saying?
Yeah. It was recently. I was listening on the radio, and a woman was being interviewed who has been long in the modeling world, and she's world famous. And the interviewer said, is your beauty a burden? And there was this incredible pause. And the guest said, no, my beauty is power. And it was so striking to me, because just as you're saying, Alison, I think so many, I don't know if it's a gender thing, but certainly the women I know, when they're complimented, they'll turn around and say, wait, are you talking about someone behind me? Or, oh, no, you don't really mean that. Or, thank you, but today, they make all kinds of excuses because for some reason it's hard for us to accept these compliments. Mm-hmm. And what I loved about her answer was, no, I am going to own it. I am going to love it. I'm going to propel it and prompt it up, and it's going to be my power.
I love that. And after you had mentioned that to me, I decided that I want to walk into rooms, and instead of getting nervous or feeling like I have to downplay myself, I want to stand tall and just think, well, yeah, when I walk in a room, I have an effect on that room.
Yeah.
Because that's such an it is a powerful thing.
It is.
But even myself, as a young woman, and I was tall and thin and blue eyes and this a little American girl, I did do some modeling. I assumed when people were staring at me that something was wrong.
Tell me
I had a
about
booger,
that.
like a booger or something in my teeth.
Oh.
Or maybe they were looking at me oh, she looks nervous. Instead of standing there and saying oh, they're admiring me, it became, oh, is something off? Is something wrong? Is a button undone? It went into the self-consciousness instead of the self-confidence. And that's just something that I would love to change for myself and for everyone. Because also, I'd like to add, sorry, I'm going on a little bit here.
No, go for it.
When you and I started this podcast, someone said, the two of you are such a powerful team. And one of the things they said was, and you're both so beautiful.
How'd that make you feel? Where did you go with that compliment? Do you remember?
I think, it's funny. I think because it was buffered with so many other things about intelligence and background and education and, strong will, whatever the other compliments were. It was okay, that's mixed into the soup. So it wasn't just it wasn't like, wow, you and Amy, like, you're doing radio, but you have faces for TV or something, something silly like that.
Yeah.
So it felt nice at the time, but I definitely, after the conversations we've had, it brought it back up in my psyche, like, oh, even that moment, I was like, well, yeah, but even though we're pretty, we're still good at radio. It just became like a negative.
It's so interesting. For me, the duality has always been a difficult one. And that, I grew up in a field where there weren't a lot of women. Mm-hmm. There are many, many more now. But in my training, there weren't a lot. And I remember I used to feel like if I walked into a room and I was the only woman in the room, in the medical environment, that all they were interested in was what I looked like and nobody would see my intelligence.
Right.
And I spent far too much energy trying to demonstrate my mind and in a way downplay the way I looked.
Yes.
And sometimes I'm not even sure that I was, beautiful in that context per se, but I was the only woman. And so I came in with this different energy and a different set of clothing, etc. So it's always been kind of an interesting challenge that I think I'm getting to a point now where I stand more firmly in kind of how I appear.
Yes.
And am more comfortable in kind of wearing what I want to wear and not worrying about whether it's too showy or too sexy or too this or too that. And I'm glad for that because, whoa, the amount of energy and time I used to spend, like, in a way downplaying it.
Right.
And being confused by it.
Yeah, because I was thinking about this when we walked in, and I love your outfit today also, Amy. You look beautiful.
Thank you.
But I heard someone say, why are you so fancy today? And so that in itself is like, why not? But I think there are these unintentional exterior influences also, like, why are you taking care of yourself? Why you look so dressed up? There's just something also in our society that's been lost.
Yeah.
In holding yourself together.
It's so true. Remember, I don't know about you, but when my family used to travel, when we were traveling in the early 70s, my mother got really dressed. My father wore a suit.
Yes.
All of my siblings and I had to get dressed as if we were going to church or going to the synagogue.
Sunday best.
Sunday best, right?
Yes.
And now, wasn't it the airlines recently said you couldn't wear like sweatpants or something? There was this whole thing during COVID, like they wanted people to get a little bit more dressed up. There was something about, do you guys remember
I
that?
do not remember that. You slobs.
Yeah, no, it was about.
Get off the plane.
What was it? It was something about. Oh, I'm going to have, now I feel silly because I brought it up and I don't remember the context, but there was something about the airlines were responding to the way people were dressing, particularly women. And I don't know if it was crop tops. It was something weird. It was so weird. But anyway, well, it's interesting. You know why I got dressed up today? It was an interesting response to having a hard morning. I heard some hard news. I kind of felt depleted by the intensity of what's going on in the world. And I, for whatever reason, and maybe you could explain this to me as a psychologist, I felt compelled to say, I'm going to put on if you will, a costume, something that makes me feel or look good, because I'm not looking so or feeling so good inside.
On the inside, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a psychologist. I'm a psychotherapist.
Oh.
But I did, there's just so many people,
Yeah.
People are like, oh, I heard you're a psychiatrist. I'm like, no, that's an MD. I'm not a psychiatrist. There's so many names. I just like to make sure, not only for myself, but for the respect of other practitioners, that I'm clear. But there's that whole look good, feel good factor. Dress for success, fake it until you make it. All of those things are about the way that you posture yourself in a situation. And, the way we look at ourselves, view ourselves, see ourselves is the way the brain interprets how we are feeling. And it's the same, which I've spoken about in the past. Like when there's something positive you're saying, like an affirmation, you really feel the benefits of that. But if you put yourself down, you feel that too. Even if you don't recognize it in the moment, or you think, oh, I'm just feeling uncomfortable because I'm saying something I don't really believe. Whatever it is, what your brain hears, your brain believes.
And do we believe the negative stuff better than the positive stuff. I like that line from Pretty Woman, that movie years ago, where Julia Roberts says, it's so much easier to accept the bad stuff.
Yes.
To embrace it.
And it's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. You can have a billion people tell you look great, and one person says one shitty thing, likely projected from their own insecurities, and that's what sticks on you like glue.
Right. So I want to try to unpackage kind of the comment about my beauty is power.
Yeah, and yes, and I would also like to unpackage what you mentioned before about how you were in a male-dominant field and felt the need to prove yourself, but not with your looks, because I think that's still very prevalent even today when women are in the workforce more, between women. But let's go with the power first.
Yeah, well, I think they're woven, right? They're woven together in some ways. Sorry, I'm going to flip-flop a little bit because the image I got with your inquiry was, remember when in the 80s we'd wear sneakers and little white socks and walk the streets of Manhattan and suits and we were male wannabes because that's where we felt we needed to look that way in order to rise in the corporate industry. And it couldn't have been, well, and then you put on your high heels when you get to the office. I mean, the whole thing was all about trying to find a uniform to allow us to fit in, to be seen, to be taken seriously.
Yeah, it just made me think of that movie Working Girl with Melanie Griffith,
yes.
where she says, I've got a mind for business and a bod for sin.
That's right.
And
that's
there ain't
right.
nothing wrong with that.
That's right. That's right.
But we're made to feel like something's wrong with that.
Right. But then she goes on to have a serious haircut. Remember where she takes her
terrible idea.
bouffant and gets a serious haircut?
But I have to say, looking back at the hairspray bangs, straight up in the air, I think everybody needed a haircut then, including myself.
There you go. There you go.
But yes, I do remember that.
Yeah.
It's not even leather. Now I'm just remembering all the lines.
Oh.
But yes, there was that, we're here, we're in skirts still, but we're somehow going to try to still make ourselves look like men. But do you think that was also to protect from the severe sexual harassment that was occurring?
No question about it.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, no question
I think
about
so
it.
too.
Absolutely. The more homogenous we look, the less we might be an outlier, the more our sex appeal may be coated over, if you will, with the suit effect. Yeah, I think that there was absolutely an attempt to kind of diminish the feminine aspect of the dress.
Right, and the sexual.
Yeah.
But back to the power. I want to talk about this.
Let's
Did you
talk about
mention
it.
that?
Yeah.
There is something powerful about, it's not all about physical attraction, and there are many different types of physical attraction and physical and beauty, and I think beauty is in the hands of the person that has it, and that doesn't mean you have to be a certain shape or size or color or cut or whatever it may be, but there is power. I just squeaked. There is power in being attractive or feeling attractive and letting that feeling become confidence and then influence.
That's the word. It's confidence.
Right.
It's about walking into that room and saying, I feel good about myself.
Right.
And that is, it's like, as you said, it just spreads out. It just fills the space, and it's so sexy. It just feels so good. It's like, I'm always reminded of when I see a beautiful older woman, and we've talked about this too, walking down the street or entering a space, who is clearly in her 70s, even 80s. And she walks in with that confidence and beauty and all the stigmata of elderly, of aging, but yet still there is just inner beauty, outer beauty, confidence that is just fantastic.
I agree. And same goes for different body shapes.
Absolutely.
Because I am not stopped on the street by like a woman that's beautiful because she's tall and thin. I am stopped on the street by a woman who is holding herself well and has her chin up in the air and has clearly taken the time to love herself and appreciate herself.
You told me that the other day you said something nice to a woman in a cafe, that you walked in and you said hello and how beautiful you look. And I'm like, right on. And
I do that all the time. I'm a complimenter in general. I get excited about other people too. It's genuine. That woman that you're referring to had a gorgeous outfit on and she looked beautiful and I went right up to her. And then as a result, almost an hour later, she came up to me and handed me her business card and said, you must be a kind and confident woman to compliment me the way you did. Like, I love meeting people like this. Let's connect. And then I just spread the connections out for more people, because it's just, it can be contagious if you allow it to be, and the kindness can as well.
Exactly. And again, in a world right now that feels so full of hate and separateness, and it's such a small act of kindness to just honor someone who walks into a room. And by just saying you're beautiful, I think it just speaks to everything they're exuding, inner and outer beauty.
Yes, but focusing again on the outer, because that's a little something that we started with.
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate how many people have to think they have to be ashamed of it.
I know.
And why? And to add to the point that I made earlier, that it still exists in the work field, even when it's a female dominant field. I know a lot of people that say they support other women and then turn their backs the minute that other woman is looking fantastic, doing well, being herself, expressing glee and joy. That's very painful. And look, we don't all have to like each other. That's just being human. It's men, women, whatever the gender is. We don't all have to like each other, but there is, I see it more than I'd like to admit. Women saying they support other women, but that is depending on their own criteria of what that woman fits into.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I often think of the tagline for the Omega Institute, the women's organization there. They talk about doing power differently. And what I like, I interpret that somewhat about this issue you just brought up of women diminishing other women. And that doing power differently should look like women supporting women, kind of as consistently as possible.
Yeah.
And we don't always like each other. That's one thing. But I'm talking about,
right,
in general, not shaming each other for being sexy, for being beautiful, for being accomplished, et cetera, because that shame is so diminishing and so harmful to all of us.
Mm-hmm. And it's also, when people say, oh, you look so beautiful. If you compliment someone and they say, I know, thank you, I'm really happy with the way I look today, you should then be more excited for them, not turn red and go tell your friends how arrogant that person was, because I see that too.
I know. So how do we change that positive reception to a compliment to something that is just, beautiful and honest and powerful, and not about, not interpreted as arrogance or, arrogant. It's such an interestingly charged issue.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have the answer.
Maybe just keep practicing it. Just keep practicing and modeling it for our girls and our boys, and, just reminding people that by complimenting and supporting others, it supports the individual, it supports the community, it supports the world.
Right. And so does taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Because when you look good and feel good, you are likely nicer to other people, not only yourself. You inspire other people. You are more patient with other people. And that, that's the kind of thing that other people see and think, I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
Like when I'm talking about my clothes because we started the conversation with my outfit. I take time to put an outfit together because it's like a palette for me.
Yeah.
And the best thing I could possibly ask to get out of that is somebody else getting excited about it. Mm-hmm. I saw a girl on the street that bought something off of me recently, and she was practically skipping, and I waved from across the street. I was like, oh my God, you look great. And it was just this sweet, lovely moment of supporting each other. But that's what that's what it's about. Those people who are taking care of themselves can inspire you to do more for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I find is true as well is if we can go to that inner place, the healthier we are, the better we feel on an internal level,
Yeah.
Fit, our skin looks good, we're sleeping well, that we're just taking care of ourselves, not just, putting on beautiful clothes, but taking care of ourselves in a more global fashion, again, that just permeates out. It just allows you to be in the world with more confidence and strength and project goodness and kindness.
Yes, and I'm sitting here as we're talking about it, thinking about like the silverback gorilla of the pack, or the most desired lioness, or whatever animal species you are to choose from. There is also just the genetically gorgeous individual, and there should be no shame around that, because that is in every species, and there is a biological design to keep the human race going. We have to be attracted to each other, but nobody should be ashamed for being attractive.
I know.
But it's out there.
I know. Well, of course, part of the problem is that the stereotypical normal beauty is
That's the problem.
far too narrow and has lived far too long in our psyche.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of happened upon, as we were thinking about what we might talk about today, I was thinking about kind of this concept of reflecting in our own mirror, reflecting how we look to the world, how the world reflects back at us. So I was thinking about Snow White. Do you remember that tale? Well,
Yes, I see it so differently now than I had seen it then.
I turned on the computer and I tapped in Snow White, and I just got a link to this little cartoon version of it, but a Germanic interpretation of it. It actually is, or originates from a German folk tale. Mm-hmm. And it was, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? And the queen is being told over and over again, she's the fairest, as Snow White is still a child. Mm-hmm. And then when Snow White becomes post-puberty and mature, all of a sudden the nasty queen is being told that she's no longer the fairest of them all. And in this version, you remember how Snow White goes to the seven dwarfs' house and she's living there.
Yes.
And then this wicked old woman, always depicted as a witch, comes by.
Yes, tries to
In
poison
our version
her.
that I learned was about the poison apple. Well, in this one, first it was a beautiful coat. So it so reminded me of what we were talking about today. And when she put the coat on, it strangled her.
Ooh.
And it was only when the seven dwarfs got home, they took it off of her. And then the second thing was a beautiful comb that she put in her hair, and it had poison in it. And only when the seven dwarfs got home and they took the comb out of her hair. And then the last was an apple. And what's so funny about it, in this version, she's eaten the apple, the witch goes away, and the seven dwarfs find her and they think she's dead. They put her in that glass coffin. And there's one little dwarf that's kind of protecting the coffin, and he bumps up against it, and the coffin falls to the ground. And all of a sudden, Snow White's alive because the apple was just lodged in her throat. So there was no longer a prince who had to kiss her.
Give her the French Heimlich maneuver?
That's right. So I just had so much to say about it.
Okay, so I appreciate very much that it eliminated the prince at the end, particularly speaking of being independent women and changing the perspective. But that is fascinating. I love the cloak idea.
Well, the cloak and the
clothing,
comb, so
and
it's all external.
About beauty. Huh.
That's what it just struck me, that you and I were going to talk about this, and that it just reminded me how deep these stories and mythologies go back in our folklore.
As an MD, would you say if someone had an apple lodged in their throat without oxygen for that long, could they?
Oh, now we're getting into the real world, are we? No, that Chica would have been long dead.
Yeah, toast. That's really, jokes aside, that is really fascinating. I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah. And it was the cartoon was very simple, but it was just such an interesting interpretation also of, first of all, I kept saying, where's the king? Where's the king in all this? Like this loving father in the beginning is absolutely gone when all of these two women are like in conflict.
Deadbeat dad.
Yep. And then there's this conversation about, okay, so the queen is not only no longer the fairest of them all because she, I don't know, maybe she's aging, but she's also not kind.
See, what I'm picking up on is the fairest, meaning we're going all white. Like,
well, that's
fair,
also part of it. Absolutely.
I can't help. That's what I hear, especially because I have biracial kids, and I'm like,
yeah,
not fair.
Well, the way they describe Snow White in the beginning, Alison, is that she's got fair Snow White skin.
I know. Very racist time when these things were written. I know. But that's my brain still goes to that.
But again, I think that tale is probably still told to children, right? I mean, it's part of the old-fashioned folklores, and if it's not that one, it's some other version of it.
Right.
Yeah.
But hooray that, like, Dopey knocked her over and shot the apple out.
I know.
I'm glad I make my producer laugh. I find great joy in making people laugh. So
it's good. It's good because when you're talking about some of this heavy stuff,
my golly, it's just too much.
You gotta laugh. So I guess I want to remind all of us, when we're looking at a mirror, we're looking at our own reflection. The first step is just being kind to yourself, because we are our worst critics.
Always.
For sure.
Always.
And that it's really okay. And in fact, I think it's really important and powerful to realize your beauty and to speak out loud about it in a way that supports other women, supports you in your journey, and speaks honestly. We want you to be in your mind, in your body, in your spirit in the most powerful way.
Yeah, be confident.
Yeah.
And complimenting other people's. Oh, what's going on with my language? Complimenting
Where
other...
would you put the apostrophe in that one?
People's. Yeah, right. Better not go do my kid's homework with her tonight.
There you go.
But complimenting other people is a sign not only of kindness, but confidence.
Yeah.
So I say, I encourage people to practice that. I wanted to, even though we're on like a positive note at the moment, I wanted to share this unknown quote that I dug up online, which sort of speaks to what we were saying earlier. And someone had said, the strange thing about me is that I feel no guilt when I repeatedly call myself ugly, but I feel guilty when I acknowledge myself as attractive or beautiful coming from myself or someone else.
Wow, does that encapsulate it?
Yeah.
Wow.
No more. Even when I was reading that, I felt my chest getting heavy and I felt like a new wave of emotion coming through me, because that goes back to what you say out loud. Your brain and your body, your psyche believes it and your spirit believes it. Like, no more being unkind to yourself. You don't have to be arrogant. Like we were talking about arrogance before. You don't have to be boastful, but just the self-love and being okay with being that person that walks in a room and for just a brief moment stops time.
Yeah.
That's power.
That's power. I heard Emma Thompson speaking recently about how she's just so done with apologizing for her body.
Good for her.
That she is just who she is, and that she's going to stop wasting time with all of the diets and again, the apologizing that she doesn't fit the typical beauty of Hollywood. And I just applauded her from afar. And the quote that you just read just so reeks of the oppression.
Yes.
And again, part of the reason I am doing Vulva Views with you, Alison, is because, well, a number of things. One, because it's so much fucking fun. But two,
yes, it is.
two, that I love our confidence. And I love that we're real with each other, that we speak to when our days are hard. I started the morning telling you I had a really crummy morning. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't take away from confidence. It just speaks to my being human and being in the world and struggling like everybody else. But that if we can model friendship, intelligence, beauty, all those things, along with sadness and worry and fear and all those other things too, complaining, That's
Anything.
what Vulva Views hopes to do, because we're not just viewing the positive, we're viewing the negative, we're viewing
All
the
of it.
beauty, and yeah, exactly.
Seeing it all.
Yeah.
Well, thank you once again. And thank you, everyone, for listening to Vulva Views. I'm Alison Chawla.
And I'm Amy Novat. Be well.